You see, in previous versions of Illustrator, you had to jump through a few hoops to make this happen. But now in CS6, it's easier than ever. Let's take a look at how this new feature works. I have the gradient_stroke.ai file already open on my machine. And I'm going to begin by using my selection tool, and I'm just going to click on this star shape in the upper left-hand corner. Now you'll notice if we come over here to our gradient panel, I'm going to go ahead and click on that to expand it. If you don't see your panel over here, you can simply come up to the window menu and simply choose gradient to display it. Now you'll notice something different in this gradient panel here, because now we can target either the fill or the stroke of an object directly inside of the gradient panel. Now what we can do is simply choose a type of gradient, so we can go with either linear or radial. So I'll start with linear here. And you'll notice that it immediately applies a linear gradient the way that it would apply it traditionally when you had expanded strokes in previous versions of Illustrator. But notice this is completely live, and it is simply applying the gradient on the stroke of the path. Now in addition, you're going to notice that down here in the stroke options, by default it's applying the gradient within the stroke. We can also click on the second one to apply the gradient along the stroke. So the way that this works is you'll notice that wherever the path starts, it will follow the path and finish the gradient where the path ends. So with a shape like this, the path is starting and ending up here at the top. Let's go ahead and click on the triangle here. I'm going to do the same thing. We'll apply a linear gradient. And this time when I apply the gradient along the stroke, you can see that the starting point of this shape is down here in the lower left-hand corner. Now let's click on this shape down here. We'll go ahead and choose a linear gradient one more time. And this third option is to apply a gradient across the stroke. So if you turn that option on, you'll notice, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so we can see this a little bit better, that it's now applying the gradient across the path and across the stroke of the object. This really opens up a lot of options for creating different effects inside of Illustrator. Now I'm going to scroll over to this last option that we have here. This is a flourish or spiral, and I'm going to apply a linear gradient one more time. Again, we can apply it across the path, and again you can see that we have different effects. Now if you want to, you can go up to the type drop-down menu and choose radial. Now this will apply it in a radial direction, and you can't really see it when you're applying it across the stroke, but if you choose a different option, you'll notice that it now kind of starts in the beginning of the object and finishes on the outside. To change colors in here, you can do it manually, or you can pick from one of the predefined presets. If you click on this drop down here, you can see that any of the swatches that you have already created, you can choose from this list and then still change their properties as well. For example, I can switch this to a radial gradient, and now it's applying it from the center to the outside. And you can also change your color stops directly inside of the gradient panel. If you want to create a gradient on your own instead of using the predefined settings, what you can do is we'll go back to a default black and white. And then what we can do is I'm going to detach the gradient panel for a second to open up my swatches panel. And what I can do is I can drag these swatches down here to apply these to create new gradient stops. Maybe I want a midpoint here, so I just kind of add another color stop here. And you can really customize all of these settings directly inside of the gradient panel. Very similar to previous versions, but you will notice that we can now apply it to the stroke. This button here allows us to reverse the gradient to go in the opposite direction from which it's defined. We'll go ahead and click on that again to reverse it. And so as you can see, Illustrator CS6 has made the process of applying strokes to gradients easier than ever. I think you'll agree that it's intuitive and powerful at the same time, and I'm sure you're already thinking of ways to apply this feature in your own work as well.